So, just as a complete aside, I've
Yeah.
started watching Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a TV series that I think is from 1996, and if you don't know what it is, then you've got problems or possibly live in a cave, and you certainly wouldn't have access to this podcast. But I've never actually watched it before. I've been purloined into it by.
The Next Generation is the one with Captain
It
Picard,
is.
right?
It's
It's got
a
yeah.
local boy, made good. Patrick Stewart's in it.
Patrick Stewart. Yeah.
Patrick Stewart, and no one else of any other acting talent. It's almost like, well, at least in the early seasons, I'm in the first season. It's almost like they've abducted a Shakespearean actor, and he's been sold into some form of slavery on a daytime American TV show. So like he's the no, it's almost like a Shakespearean actor's gone into witness protection and
That's a good. Yeah, that's a good phrase for it.
wound up on cable access television, and so he's there shooting the scenery to bits, and everyone else is delivering odd lines and getting to weird, like blocking on this on the set, and it's all very strange. But the thing that impresses me most is how it's the future, like the far future, and
Yes.
their idea of what technology is going to be misses so much stuff. It's unusual.
I don't know. I think that whole aesthetic is very charming for lots of ways.
But I'm going to
in
share
lots of
one
ways.
observation for you.
Yeah, go
They
on.
ask Data to do some sort of annotation to the computer,
Okay.
and he does it by typing really, really, really quickly,
Okay.
rather than being internet access or something, and just downloading it directly from his mind.
Sure. Yeah, which would make more sense in terms of his character, but doing the typing thing is more of a engaging visual, I
Yeah.
suppose.
What's really funny is that they keep referring to the lift as a turbo lift, and I'm like, I don't care how fast it is, you would just call it a lift, surely.
That's actually one of the most charming parts of retro-futurism, I suppose. There's the whole aesthetic of like what people in the '60s thought the future would look like. I think it's called ray gun gothic,
Yes.
which I think is just a wonderful phrase and it's a wonderful term. But you see the limits of it in the nomenclature, right? You see the limits of it in the way things are named. Like you read back over sort of old '60s like pulpy science fiction, and they're talking about a turbo radiogram.
Yes, yeah.
And it's like you're sort of pushing the limits of what you can imagine because you're taking the technology that you've got of the day as being essentially universal.
Hyper television.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like you can only imagine bigger and better versions of that, not different things entirely.
Yeah, like some kind of space tram. I don't know. Just
That's another good one actually.
yeah, no, I've been people keep telling me it's going to get better, so fingers crossed. Because otherwise, I'm just gonna not watch it.
Has there ever been a series which has radically shaken up the formula and done it with different actors and really just a whole different ethos, like the different incarnations of Star Trek? Has there ever been a TV series or film series which has done that and done it successfully?
Not one that comes to mind immediately.
No, I was just thinking I can't think of one
Yeah,
especially.
like
that comes to
I
mind.
literally can't think of anything that has. I mean, the thing is, Star Trek's unusual because they just sort of zip backwards and forwards, like in time. So Star Trek original series is like maybe is it about 100 years before Next Generation?
I've got no idea what the canon is, I'm afraid.
I
I'm
haven't a
sorry.
clue. I'm sure that there's people who maybe if the Trekkies listen to this screaming at us. No, I can't think of anything that reinvented itself quite so well. I know obviously like James Bond did a really good job of not sucking when it came back after. I mean, did you ever see Die Another Day?
No, I saw some of the Brosnan films and they got progressively more and more silly.
Yes, well, Die Another Day was the event horizon for silliness. It was just an orgy of nonsensical plot lines, needless sexualization, an invisible car, a hotel made out of ice. No. It was just awful. And then to come back after a break with Casino Royale,
Yes.
That's pretty inspired. You know, they went gritty and quality plot line rather than because it is just a real simple plot. Is
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the things that the new James Bond films seem to be trying to do. A lot of the time, they really seem to be acting like sort of handwritten apology notes for all the silliness that came before them.
yeah, like the hover gondola.
Yeah, yeah, and just all the ridiculously elaborate gadgets. Like there's a scene in one of the new ones where Bond has like the gadget scene, and his gadgets are a gun and a radio.
And a
You know, and
car.
oh yeah, but he says at the time he's like, oh, it's not exactly. I've got a gun and a radio. It's not exactly Christmas, is it? And Q says, yeah, were you expecting an exploding pen? Yeah, we don't really do that anymore. But even then, even with the Bond series, it's like because there've been so many of them and they've been released at fairly regular intervals. That was more of like a slow evolutionary process rather than okay, we're gonna have this one series and then cut, and then 10 years later we'll have this other series.
With like 100 years in the future.
Mm.
You know, I can find a great analogy a great comparison in comic books actually.
Mm.
Aside from the fact that Paul Pope, really talented artist and writer, did Batman Year 100, which was Batman 100 years later, which I'd
Yes.
recommend checking out just for the visual quality as much as the actual plot line. There was a series called Prophet, which was one of the original Image comic books from the late 80s, early 90s, and it was invented by everyone's favorite drawer of feet, Rob Liefeld.
If you're not familiar with this, Rob Liefeld is a comic book artist, and first of all, he's got no idea how the female body looks,
Humans
or
work.
really how the male body looks.
Or just
And he especially can't draw feet. He'll like contrive situations so that his characters are standing behind things,
mean-
so he doesn't have to draw their feet.
like little diamond-shaped hooves.
Yeah, once you notice that you can't not see it, and suddenly all of his characters, you're immediately focused on his feet, on their feet, like some kind of comic book reading Quentin Tarantino.
All of his men are hulking flesh castles, just covered in covered in pouches and guns, and all of his women, they take hourglass figure to a Salvador Dali proportion.
Yeah, there is something Salvador Dali-esque about
Something
it, isn't
twiglety in the middle that if they move too quickly they might snap, but with hulking tits and hips that could birth a rhino. But he creates a series called Prophet, which is about a man called John Prophet, who was a Second World War fighter, super soldier program, fought the bad guys, but then found God and became Prophet. And he went on for 20 issues, got
Yes.
cancelled, then came back 20 years later, set 20,000 years in the future.
Oh, you said 20 though, and I thought you were going to say that they'd aged him in real time, so it'd be set 20 years later. But maybe that was what Rob Liefeld was going for, and then his finger got stuck on the zero key.
So they got a new creative team, and they
Oh shit! I guess it's the future now. All right.
But they set it as like a space Conan adventure with like hundreds of thousands of clones of John Prophet, and
Yeah.
it was so cool. But the thing is, that you took a really crappy comic book series and made it awesome by just setting it 20,000 years in the future and completely ignoring everything that came before it.
I think in a lot of ways, if you're going to remake something, that's often a good place to start.
Yeah, just sort of
In that you could take the setting and take maybe a couple of the characters and take the established aesthetic and then just completely go nuts with it, really.
I mean, it took a lot of the original characters and did insane things to them.
Yeah.
Like, there's a character in Prophet called Bad Rock, or at least in Image series called Bad Rock, who is like a teenage boy who can turn into a giant rock. I never said it was clever.
No,
and,
you didn't.
They set him in the future, and they find out that he turns up in Prophet in the future, and he's turned to a planet. He just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger until eventually he's just he's his own structure in space.
Again, that's taking like a dumb idea and doing something fractionally less dumb with it, or at the very least developing the dumbness a little
Yeah,
bit.
developing the dumbness so that it becomes clever. Like, just like refining carbon into diamonds.
Yeah, it's
Kind of.
It's still dumb, but now it's a bit.
It's like
shinier.
hyper intensity dumb. It's like the sort of dumb that makes you go, whoa.
It's the kind of dumb that's so dumb that only a really clever person could have thought of it.
That's perfect.